Hey everyone, welcome back. If you're new here, I'm Kavya, and today I'm going to be showing you how to create 3 delicious edible gifts. These are perfect homemade gifts that you can create for your family, friends, or even just for yourself for any occasion, any time of year. And especially with Christmas just around the corner, I thought it was the perfect time to share these with you. All of these recipes are plant-based, easy to make, and honestly, I think they all look so beautiful when bundled up into a glass jar. I'll be sharing 2 sweet gift ideas and also a savory option to help balance out all that sweetness. And if you know of anyone who isn't as much of a sweet tooth, then this one might just be perfect for them. To make things a little easier for you guys, I have designed a free printable PDF, which I've linked in the description box. This contains all the gift tags that you will see featured in today's video. You can simply print them off, cut them out, and attach them onto your jars to make them look even more beautiful. Also, I'll leave the timestamps for each recipe in the description, so you can feel free to skip ahead to a particular recipe if you like. Alright, I hope you guys enjoy, and let's get started. I'm sure many of you have seen these layered gift jars before. I first came across these a few years ago at a farmer's market here in Melbourne, and I thought they looked so pretty with all the different coloured layers. They've definitely become increasingly popular over the years, and you can find so many different variations on these on Pinterest and online. You can find brownie mixes, cake mixes, pancake mixes, and more, all layered into a jar. Today I'll be sharing my own little spin on this, and that is this fruit and nut cookie mix. If you've ever enjoyed a Cadbury fruit and nut chocolate block, then I'm sure you'll love this one. This is a perfect gift for anyone you know who loves to bake, and even if they don't, you are essentially handing them all the dry ingredients that they need to make and enjoy these cookies fresh at home. I'll be showing you how to actually use this jar and bake the cookies a little later on in the video, but first let's get started with assembling this jar to give as a gift. So to make this, you will need 1 cup of plain flour, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, 1 cup of rolled oats, half a cup of brown sugar, 1/3 cup of castor sugar, 1/3 cup of plant-based chocolate chips or chocolate buttons, 1/4 cup each of chopped pecans, slivered almonds, raisins, and dried diced papaya. Of course, you don't have to use the same dried fruits and nuts that I've mentioned here. I just really love this combination, but you can go ahead and switch these out for other options like walnuts or peanuts. You can use dates, apricots, cranberries, really anything that you have on hand. And of course, you are going to need a glass jar of some sort that is approximately 1 litre in capacity. To assemble your jar, start off by adding in the flour. I would suggest carefully spooning the flour into the jar just to help avoid getting too much flour residue on the sides of the jar. Once you've done that, you can gently shake and tap the jar on the bench to flatten out the layer. And if you want, you can take a silicone spatula and wipe down the sides of the jar as required. Then add in your baking powder and then your rolled oats. Then you want to add in your brown sugar. With the brown sugar, it is more dense compared to the flour and the rolled oats, so I would recommend just using a spoon to help distribute the layer evenly, and also just using the back of a spoon to press down and smooth out the brown sugar as much as possible. Next is the castor sugar. Once again, use a spoon to distribute it as evenly as possible, and then tap the jar a few times on your bench to even out that layer. Add in your chocolate chips or chocolate buttons, and finally you want to layer in your dried fruits and nuts. I started with the pecans, then the almonds, raisins, and finally the dried papaya on top. And that's it. You can go ahead and attach the ingredient and instruction labels onto your jar, and then these are pretty much ready to be gifted. Now, the way these jars usually work is that they contain all the dry ingredients for the recipe, and these can be stored in the pantry for a couple of months, and they're pretty much ready to use for whenever the person you are gifting this to wants to bake themselves a batch of fresh cookies. The recipient of this gift will need to add in a few ingredients of their own, and these are usually any wet ingredients that obviously can't be layered into a jar. For this particular jar, they are going to need 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, half a cup of oil. I used melted coconut oil here, but you can use vegetable oil or canola oil or sunflower oil, and 1 flax egg. A flax egg is simply created by using 1 tablespoon of ground flax seeds and 3 tablespoons of water, stirred together and set aside to thicken for 15 minutes before adding it into the cookie mix. To use this jar, all you need to do is empty its contents into a large mixing bowl, add in your 3 ingredients, so your flax egg, your oil, and your vanilla, and then go ahead and mix it all up using your hands. Roll up the mixture, place them on a baking tray, and then you can go ahead and pop these in the oven at 180 degrees Celsius for approximately 10 minutes until they are lightly golden. Remove them from the oven, let them cool down on a wire rack, and then you can serve these up and enjoy. Next up is this delicious capsicum chutney. Although I've called it spicy, the recipe that I'll be sharing today makes for a more mild to medium version, but you can of course feel free to adjust the levels of spice to your own preference. This chutney is so good and you can have it in so many different ways. You can put it in a sandwich or in a wrap, you can spread it on some toast, and it's also a great little addition to a cheese platter or grazing board. To make this recipe, you are going to need 4 large red capsicums roughly diced, 2 to 3 medium brown onions also diced, 1 tablespoon of chili powder, 2 teaspoons of paprika, half of a teaspoon of turmeric powder, 2 teaspoons of tamarind puree and 2 teaspoons of salt, 2 tablespoons of canola oil or cooking oil of your choice, and for the seasoning at the end, you will need 2 teaspoons of whole black mustard seeds and 2 teaspoons of oil, and I'll show you what to do with that at the end. Start off by adding 2 tablespoons of cooking oil of your choice and heating it up in a pan on low to medium heat. Add in your diced onions and fry until they are translucent and lightly golden. Then add in your capsicums, saute for a couple of minutes before adding in the rest of your spices, so your salt, chili powder, paprika, turmeric, and tamarind puree. Give it all a nice stir and let this cook for about 10 to 15 minutes until the capsicums are well cooked and softened. I do recommend keeping a close eye and giving the mixture a stir every now and then, just to prevent anything from sticking and burning to the bottom of the pan. If you need to, you can add a splash of water every now and then just to help deglaze the surface. Once the capsicums are well cooked, you can give it a quick taste and see if you want to add in any extra seasoning before removing it from the heat and transferring the mixture into a heatproof bowl. Set that aside to cool down to room temperature for about 15 to 20 minutes before placing the mixture into a food processor or blender and then blending that for about 30 to 45 seconds, stopping every now and then to scrape down the sides as required. If you prefer a smoother texture for your chutney, you can blend this for a bit longer, and if you prefer a chunkier texture, then you can feel free to pulse it for a shorter period of time. Once that's done, you can pour it into a bowl, and then it's time to make the black mustard seasoning. To make this, you want to add 2 teaspoons of oil and 2 teaspoons of whole black mustard seeds into a small saucepan on low to medium heat. Keeping the saucepan covered, allow the oil to heat up, and as it does, the mustard seeds should start to pop. Once the popping stops or slows down, you can remove the saucepan from the heat and pour the contents into your chutney. Make sure you do this very slowly as the oil is still hot and it will sizzle when you add it to the bowl. Then give everything a mix until it's well combined. The mustard seasoning just adds a really lovely roasted flavor to this capsicum chutney, but it is optional, so if you don't like the flavor, then you can always leave this step out. And that is your capsicum chutney done. I went ahead and placed these into jars. To give you a rough idea, this quantity made for about 2 300ml preserving jars, but you can always double or triple the quantity just depending on how much you need to make. Also, this one is best kept in the fridge, so if you are gifting this, just let the other person know. And I've also popped that information on the gift tag, which you can attach onto the jars. Next up are these almond cookies. These are delicious, they melt in your mouth, and they are perfect to enjoy with a cup of tea. To make these, you will need 300 grams of almond meal, 300 grams of plain flour. You can also use gluten-free plain flour, which also works really well in this recipe, 140 grams of icing sugar, 1 teaspoon of baking powder and 1 teaspoon of bicarbonate soda, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and 200 ml of oil. I'm using canola oil here, but you can use vegetable oil or sunflower oil or any other oil you have on hand. Now, the trick to getting the perfect consistency for this cookie dough is to use a set of kitchen scales to weigh out all your dry ingredients, as it does give the best results. In a large mixing bowl, measure out your almond meal, your plain flour and icing sugar, then add in your baking powder and bicarbonate soda and salt. Give it all a whisk to combine and then add in your oil and mix your cookie dough together. You will know that the consistency of your cookie dough is correct when you can squeeze it together and it sticks together and holds its shape. If you notice that it's not quite holding its shape, then I would suggest adding in a little extra almond meal just to help balance it out. Now, next up is a little secret that I'm going to share with you. You don't need any fancy molds to make these cookies. All you need is a tablespoon measuring spoon. Take that spoon, fill it up with cookie dough, and then use the base of your palm to firmly press the dough into the tablespoon. You can wipe away any excess dough and then gently pop that out of the tablespoon, and you have yourself a lovely dome-shaped cookie. Repeat the process, place your cookies onto a baking tray, and then pop that into the oven at 180 degrees and bake for approximately 10 to 12 minutes until you see that the base of the cookies are lightly golden and there should be slight cracks that have formed on top of the cookies. You can let them cool down in the baking tray before transferring them into your jars. Now, just to give you a rough idea, this mix made between 45 to 50 cookies of this size, and I was able to fill up these 2 jars. They're 1 liter jars that I purchased from IKEA, and I've put roughly about 24 to 25 cookies in each. And there you have it. 3 delicious edible gift ideas for you to create. As always, I'll leave the written recipe down in the description. This has all the exact measurements and instructions for you. Let me know in the comments if you do give any of these a try. I would love to hear what you think of them. Also, if you guys enjoyed this video, then please feel free to give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, you can subscribe to my channel and click on that notification bell to be kept informed of whenever I create new content. Thank you so much for being here and for watching. Wishing you all a safe and happy Christmas, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye.